Hi there. I'm Tom Field. I'm Senior Vice President of Editorial with Information Security Media Group. Very pleased to welcome you to the conversation today, where I'm talking about how AI driven segmentation is redefining customer strategy and financial services. Joining me today is Michael Villar, is the Director of Field Security Technology with Akamai. Michael, thanks so much for taking time to speak with me.
Oh, thank you for having me here, Tom.
So, give me some background here. What are some of the ransomware trends that you're seeing in financial services, and how would you say they've evolved over the past year?
Yeah, honestly, it's a completely different battlefield than it was even 2 years ago. We've moved past that era of manual ransomware, and what we're seeing now is kind of the rise of AI-driven predator swarms, and the speed is quite honestly, it's alarming. The volume of attacks they've increased year over year, and the entire kill chain from reconnaissance to initial access to data exfiltration has condensed from weeks to days to minutes. And the real kicker is the barrier for entry has completely vanished. You don't need to be a nation state hacker anymore. AI allows low-level expertise affiliates to use agents that perform complex tool calls and deploy malware that actually learns and adapts to your network defenses, and it does it in real time. We've also recognized that there's an evolution in the tactics. Basically, banks have gotten much better at playing defense. They're stopping hackers mid-acts so often that only about half of the encryption attempts really work. And since that lock your files trick isn't the payday that it used to be, attackers are getting creative and quite honestly, they're a bit more aggressive. Since they can't always lock your data, they just steal it instead and they'll threaten to leak private client information or shut down the bank's apps with a DDoS attack until somebody pays up. So it's kind of less about kidnapping the data and more about blackmail. And what's pretty wild is that ransomware groups are now headhunting. They're looking for actual employees to sell their logging credentials. And it's easier to walk in through the front door with a real key than it is to pick the lock.
This is why adversaries say, or people say adversaries aren't breaking in, they're logging in, right?
That's right.
Where do you find that institutions are most challenged to detect and contain ransomware today in this environment?
So the challenge is that financial institutions are often sitting on a flat legacy architecture with complex hybrid clouds and a constantly shifting perimeter. Many times the enforcement of security is done asymmetrically or it's fragmented, and only portions of the infrastructure are supported by subsets of the solutions. The sheer number of breaches that attackers are getting through the perimeter defenses, it demonstrates they can pretty much do that at will. And once they're inside, they find a relatively flat network where your assets are virtually unguarded, and the rush to the cloud has also multiplied the attack surface as well. There's a lot of complexity there. And without tight communication controls, every single server essentially becomes its own attack surface. Attackers are also focusing on living off the land, and they're leveraging legitimate protocols to blend in. They're moving laterally, they're staying invisible, and they do that while they exfiltrate your data to sell or ransom it later. Once an attacker penetrates the perimeter, detection and containment become a nightmare. It's less about breaking in now and more about a quiet, high-speed takeover.
Michael, talk to me about AI driven segmentation. How is it different from traditional segmentation as we know it? And of course, why is it needed now more than ever?
So you can think of traditional segmentation kind of like building a stone wall. It's static, it's manual, and once it's up, it's kind of a nightmare to change. If you misconfigure one rule, you risk impacting an entire network segment. Dynamic environments, they are pretty difficult to accommodate, especially if you're crossing multiple boundaries. AI-driven microsegmentation is more like high-tech living armor. And at the risk of oversimplifying it, it's a matter of analyzing your network and infrastructure and how it communicates and taking the guesswork out of policy creation. Instead of engineers deciding if an application is ready, AI should answer that automatically and continuously. This makes your rules adaptable, it makes them dynamic, and it improves your time to value and risk reduction, but also is improving your accuracy and reducing the operational burden. And we need it now because AI-driven offense requires an AI-enabled defense. The human in the loop security model is becoming obsolete for detection and containment. When an AI agent is identifying 0 days and is executing a lateral movement strategy at machine speed, The human analyst waiting for a SIM alert to pop up, it's already too late. They can't contain what they can't see, and they certainly can't contain it fast enough when the attack structure is automated and effective. So we have to provide our cyber defense the ability to act with the same autonomy as the attackers, and the solutions they use need to adapt to make their jobs easier.
Fair points. How does Akamai approach this concept of AI-driven segmentation?
Sure. So Akamai, particularly through Akamai Guardicore segmentation, takes a visibility first approach. You can't secure what you don't understand. So we collect and analyze not just the network telemetry, but process level detail. And we don't filter out traffic just because it might be too noisy. And we look at the data on an individual workload basis, whether it's on-prem, cloud, or even legacy. AI-driven segmentation is basically about taking the grunt work out of zero trust. And if you've ever tried to do microsegmentation manually, you know it's a nightmare of spreadsheets, guessing which IP address belongs to which app. And Akamai solves this by using AI. So first you have AI labeling, and that acts as your eyes of the system. It watches how your servers behave. Instead of relying on static spreadsheets or manual tags, the AI analyzes behavioral DNA. It's examining processes, ports, traffic patterns, and says, hey, this looks exactly like an Oracle database, and then it labels it for you. And as your environment changes, new systems are added or moved, it continues to monitor and make suggestions and updates to keep things current and prevent security regression. There's no stale labels with this. It even gives you a confidence score, so you aren't just taking its word for it. It's something that's actually measurable. And this simplifies the process of adding context and understanding what's in your network without the manual research and all the correlation. Following that is the Akamai Guardicore's segmentation's generative policy engine. This is what automates the process of microsegmentation. Most segmentation projects stall not because enforcement is difficult, but because getting to enforcement safely is slow, it's manual, and it's risky. So Guardicore's new application policies workflow, powered by the generative policy engine, changes that starting point. We automatically discover applications, we calculate the readiness continuously, and generate policies from real traffic. Instead of asking, what rules should I write? We ask, which applications are actually ready to segment and why? We don't generate the rules first, we generate confidence first.
Michael, what are some of the key benefits organizations are going to receive from AI-driven segmentation? I'm thinking of reduced risk, increased efficiency. What do you expect to see?
Yeah, I think we're going to see accelerated enforcement. So this is what's going to move organizations from network visibility to active protection, and we're going to be able to do that significantly faster than manual methods. Then, in addition to that, we have like operational simplicity and improving the efficiency. So smaller teams are going to be able to manage a massive hybrid cloud environment. They can parse through tons of complex data sets and derive, human readable insights. They're empowered to orchestrate the implementation of security controls with more ease and less friction. And we're seeing a massive reduction in the man hours required to maintain compliance and adhere to standards like PCI DSS or DORA. And finally, the precision and adaptability. We reduce the risk of human error in writing and maintaining thousands of granular firewall rules. You have the benefit of tight controls without the burden of manually keeping them up to date and making sure they're effective.
What are the tools, the skills enterprises need to really get off the ground and maximize this?
I mean, you need a tool, something like Akamai Guardicore segmentation to gather the telemetry, process it, and ultimately to do the enforcement. Skill-wise, we need to move security teams from being firefighters to orchestrators. They need to understand how to govern AI agents rather than doing the manual work themselves. Don't build a better wall, but build a better internal containment system and governance that work without needing a human to click OK for every block packet.
No, well said. Michael, we've covered a lot in a short period of time. Where can our audience go to learn even more about AI-driven segmentation?
Check out akamai.com/security. And we have some really interesting blog posts that show everything that we're doing. And it's a great way to stay up to date on all the progress.
Michael, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time, for your insight.
Thank you.
Again, the discussion's been about AI-driven segmentation, how it's redefining customer strategy in financial services. You just heard from Michael Villar. He's Director of Field Security Technology with Akamai. For Information Security Media Group, I'm Tom Field. Thank you for giving us your time and attention today.